Chapter 6. The Trouble with Truthing. The belief system was put inside you like a program by the outside dream. The Toltecs call this program the parasite. The human mind is sick because it has a parasite that steals its vital energy and robs it of joy. The parasite is all those beliefs that make you suffer. Miguel Ruiz. Is your Loosh on the loose? In The World, Cult, and You, I explored an extremely controversial, hot-button topic that triggered a lot of readers: the radical idea that truthers and truthing might be dangerous, and that trauma bonding relative to doomsday scenarios might be a symptom of collective mental illness and cultish adherence to groupthink. After publication of my book, which contains a number of playfully challenging memes addressing different aspects of this decidedly unhealthy scenario, I created another that read, "Stop helping doomsday cults bring about doomsday using your energy." One way to grasp what's going on in this bizarrely self-defeating situation is to examine the Matrix and its overlord, the dragon, through the lens of the human energy sometimes referred to as Loosh. Loosh is, in a word, dragon food. We might think of Loosh as the form of human energy consciousness adopts as it slides toward being unconscious through traumatization and other negative forms of behavioral engineering. As I've been arguing, the conscious energy of attention can be used to do literally anything because it's a focalization of the imagination, the binding life force that amalgamates thoughts, emotions, and beliefs into a powerfully creative gestalt. You could also call this force chi, prana, kundalini, torsion energy, scalar waves, even mojo. These are all merely variations on the central theme of all matrix energy dynamics: people power. Imagination can be concentrated by attention to build positive outcomes, harmonious structures, communities, technologies, even worlds. But it can just as easily be harnessed to create hell on earth. Where power is concerned, there's no judgment, no duality, no left and right, no yin and yang, no good versus evil. Universally speaking, all that matters is power, pure and simple. This is why, in world mythology, the seemingly antithetical archetypes of creation and destruction are often wedded in the same god or goddess. Currently, we find ourselves losing ourselves in a weird feedback loop in this simulated dreamscape of a worldwide civilization managed by the dragon that keeps rerouting human energy to create less than desirable outcomes for everybody except the dragon. In this debilitating scenario, doomsday cults of all kinds are allowed to thrive online and off because they serve our spiritual adversaries' trauma-based mind control agenda. It doesn't matter whether we're talking bona fide doomsday cults identifying as such, or camouflaged truther cults masquerading as YouTube channels. All such gaslighting organizations are used by the dragon to bend the spoon of reality in a doomsday direction here in this Loosh siphoning matrix. When you give doomsday or other fear-mongering cults your attention, just your attention, simply by listening to their words, and certainly by subscribing to them, sending them likes, shares, follows, and even money, you're offering up your precious power in promotion of doomsday. Don't shoot me, I'm just the messenger. Again, attention is the faculty of focusing the life force. When you allow your attention to be negatively focused by another mind, whether that of the dragon or even another person, that mind can create with your personal power, which has now become Loosh, what it will. Realize that nothing any of these so-called truthers are saying is inherently true because there's no there to begin with in this construct. It's all made up, every bit of it, including anything calling itself science, that scam of scams in this benighted house of mirrors ruled by the false god of rationality. It's widely acknowledged by many pundits that we no longer live in an age of news, but of narrative as news. But what if this is old news? What if things have always been this way? Indeed, I suggest they have. When you invest your attention in a particular line of truthing, you're choosing to buy into, energetically support, or pay for with your attention somebody or something else's narrative. Simple as that. We can easily extrapolate this dynamic even to works of literature, movies, shows, music, and other forms of mind manipulation on whose altars you offer up the sacred gift of your attention. When you think about it this way, human sacrifice is more prevalent today than ever. Placebo and pronoia power. Our individual attention is exceedingly powerful, no doubt about it. But when our attentions, plural, come together in an aligned group, we're looking at the nuclear option, creative or destructive potential on a monumental scale. In signing a tacit contract by attending to things that don't contain inspiration or optimism, get your mind around the rule of engagement that your energy can and will be used against you by the dragon and its minions. I know that certain aspects of my work having to do with the world cult might be considered heavy. Still, given my ultimately empowering message of holing and transcendence, I suggest that my writing on this subject constitutes a sort of psychological litmus test separating spiritual warriors from mundane victims. Warriors can't get enough of my perspective, and they've told me so repeatedly. Victims would rather visit a proctologist than consider the actual nature of the world they inhabit and their role in producing and sustaining it. Could this be because there are fewer and fewer genuine individuals? Again, in the sense of being individuated? In this period of orchestrated chaos in which tribalism is making a fierce comeback left, right, and center? Or perhaps informed, measured optimism such as mine is dismissed because it appears to contradict the so-called facts, even though facts, like weather patterns, can and do suddenly change as the scientific narratives that establish facts mysteriously mutate. On this subject, consider the fact that the speed of light, that universal constant on which the massive edifice of modern physics is largely based, is forever changing. Several years ago, Rupert Sheldrake made this point emphatically in a highly popular TED Talk. And do you know what happened to that talk? It was rigorously attacked and censored by the dragon's gatekeepers of acceptable discourse. Or maybe the comparatively sane voices of hope, as opposed to hopium, are ignored because trauma-based mind control produces addiction to despair in the masses, a kind of Stockholm syndrome throughout the matrix. Whatever the case, the very neologism hopium is, in my opinion, just another clever psyop employed by the dragon's yes men and women to detract and distract from the empowering notion that positivity by itself can change the world. Our feelings, thoughts, beliefs, and even expectations act as filters through which our imaginations initiate the process of generating our particular experienced reality. These filters influence our interpretation of events, our interactions with others, and even our physical health. Take, for instance, the well-documented placebo effect. This phenomenon is a ringing testament to the influence of an upbeat focus. When we believe in a positive outcome, our bodies respond accordingly, prompting production of endorphins, pumping up the immune system and even dulling our perception of pain. Conversely, the nocebo effect demonstrates the detrimental impact of a negative focus. If we go in expecting side effects from a treatment, for example, we're a lot more likely to experience them, even if the treatment itself is just a sugar pill. This highlights the wisdom of cultivating positive expectations and minimizing negative self talk. These effects, it should be noted, aren't limited to medical contexts. They permeate every aspect of our lives. The key takeaway here is that our minds are extraordinary tools for creating desired or feared outcomes. A related discussion revolves around paranoia and its opposite, pronoia. Paranoia isn't the only way to manifest consequences, in this case, negative ones, through the focus of attention. Individuals prone to paranoia may interpret impersonal interactions as personally directed attacks, creating a self-fulfilling dynamic of fear and mistrust. Alternatively, we can consciously opt for pronoia, the belief that the universe, multiverse, or whatever you wish to call it, is conspiring to bless you at all times, appearances notwithstanding. By operating with pronoia, we invite a number of potential benefits that have the power to radically change our lives for the better, leading to greater happiness, resilience, and fulfillment. With pronoia, we're far more likely to perceive breakdowns as breakthroughs, attract positive relationships under even the most challenging conditions, and experience a sense of flow and synchronicity while others around us might be stuck in a rut. Just as the placebo and nocebo effects demonstrate the power of positive and negative expectations, respectively, the concepts of pronoia and paranoia offer further insight into the role our perceptions play in crafting our reality. It's a maxim that where attention goes, energy flows. Or as the famous line from Field of Dreams phrases it, "If you build it, he will come." Focus on a fairy tale city on a hill, and someday you just might live there. Focus on a dystopia like the one in Hunger Games, and your mind as a foreign installation. Sadly, in this upside-down construct, when you broadcast fear and panic at the top of your lungs, the dragon's algorithms can't get enough of you. The upshot is that you receive a wildly disproportionate amount of attention, especially considering that your message is, despite any and all positive window dressing, anti-human garbage. Hope panhandles while fear sells like hotcakes. This may lean toward the cliche, but it's just the way things are here in this nowhere, right now, anyway. A fearful outlook eventually leads to behaviors that are, in the final analysis, self-sabotaging. This is because such behaviors are the intentional results of the dragon's net or web of mental strategies designed to entrap you and harvest your loosh. The irony, of course, is that we ultimately entrap ourselves and sacrifice our own loosh. It's as if there's a universal law even the dragon can't ignore, requiring it to have us agree on some level to our own undoing. Enter the ubiquity of contracts and the pervasive idea of social contracts in this construct. My research into and practice of shamanism and inner alchemy has led me to conclude, logically as well as experientially, that the majority of the population are downloaded with the consciousness of the dragon. This means that most people are using a foreign, read extraterrestrial, installation as their operating system. In other words, to reiterate this freakishly literal point, the masses aren't really even thinking with their own minds. Now, does their consistently insane behavior make a little more sense? Technically, you could say that we're really not even up against mind control per se. Instead, we're faced with the far more troubling prospect of mind ownership by an absentee owner. No wonder Matrix denizens can't see the forest for the trees, can't see the positive, can't acknowledge the potential for transformation that's all around, but more importantly, inside them. Get out of the feedback loosh. But my goal isn't to focus my own powerful attention on the negative, despite the ponderous darkness that's nearly palpable to anyone with a shred of their own consciousness intact. I propose, in fact, that the incessant fear-mongering heaped on us today is ironically a tool implemented at the behest of the dragon to wake the flock up. Yes, hate on me if you must, but I'm going there by suggesting that the dragon, which I've elsewhere called the great parasite, is actually here to teach us about who we are and the world we live in. When you step back from it, you realize that the whole idea of so many fearful conspiracies proliferating like harmful bacteria everywhere isn't just surreal or overkill, it's ludicrous. This reality is so obviously unreal. It's like bad screenplay writing. No matter how many times you see the same tired script being played out on the world stage, if you can manage to think for yourself just a little, it's simply not believable. Could this be by design? Part of the dragon's wake up strategy for humanity? In The World Cult and You, I touch on the process of awakening that many seekers like myself have gone through, coming face to face with conspiracies galore after doing the research and all that runaround. I explicitly state that I'm not advising people to forego exploring their interests, thinking rationally, etc. I also emphasize that there comes a time, a sort of epiphany like something out of Through the Looking Glass, when you realize that everything you've discovered through your research has basically been fed to you because you've been looking for it. We're in a complex feedback loop, or for most people, feedback loosh, that reveals to us an imaginary reality that we choose to buy into just before it becomes our lived reality. So many things are put out to make it seem as if we're helpless victims of this crazy matrix. This is the purpose of such lopsided half-truths as the popular, and for that reason alone, highly dubious, notion that we're stuck against our will in a soul trap or reincarnation trap that most people will never escape. Obviously, such a worldview isn't compatible with, say, a starting point founded on a Christian eschatological perspective with a definitive end date to the status quo. Yet, if you keep feeding your new research interest on souls transmigrating ad nauseum into the construct, it will keep giving back to you precisely what you're looking for. But then, if you become interested in something else and start researching that, suddenly the construct starts feeding back to you new information to support your new viewpoint. It's like magic, because it is, thanks to your magical attention. See how this works? If you take a moment to compare the first two lines of your research, linear eschatology versus circular metempsychosis, you'll note that they're utterly incompatible, mutually exclusive. Yet you've uncovered mountains of evidence supporting both theories. This is what's happening on a massive, multifaceted scale in today's conspiracy theory community. The problem is that the entire smorgasbord of conspiracy evidence is just fabrications of consciousness. It doesn't prove anything except that attention is really, really creative. The construct is, with a wink and a nod, as it were, clearly just playing your perceptions back to you in endless variations. At some point, the only logical conclusion is that this is all in your mind. That's the wake up moment when you finally slap your forehead and say, I'm creating all this baloney. And then the all important follow up question. So, what do I want to create now that I'm conscious that I'm creating everything? Be a solipsist, not a narcissist. From the perspective of consciousness expansion, It's actually a service to us to have so much weirdness thrown at us, like classic slapstick pies in the face, over and over again. The weirdness might very well be, it's at least worth considering, part of our own design from some higher aspect of ourselves to wake us up here in the dream of this so called reality. When I language my thoughts this way, know that I'm far from inviting you to become a public narcissist like some plastic law of attraction guru, patting yourself on the back in a selfie for having finally recognized your own divine nature. Instead, I'm suggesting that you embrace your closet solipsist. In this context, solipsism is the idea that, to use a well worn phrase, there's only one of us here, a creative consciousness forever experiencing permutations of itself, for whatever reason. This notion is often ridiculed by truthers, many of whom simply loathe it with every fearful fiber of their manipulated being. To them, good news must be fake news. That should tell you something. When you experience the full impact of what I call the solipsistic awakening, you're not staring at your navel, you're staring into infinity. You've got both feet in the dark sea of awareness and are about to take a deep breath and dive right in. Back here in the Matrix, you've also just been handed a heaping helping of personal accountability. We're talking a Peter Parker moment, when you realize that with tremendous power comes tremendous responsibility. Is manifestation always getting exactly what your ego wants? I don't think so. Manifestation is, in my opinion, getting exactly what the wiser part of you knows you need, and then the less wise part of yourself has to deal with the after effects. Such a situation is the direct opposite of narcissism. You do come face to face with the staggering magnitude of what you're capable of, yes. But rather than having your ego inflated at the reflection of your bad self, you experience awe in relation to the totality of what you are and feel deep humility. In a solipsistic world where there's only one of us here, narcissism and runaway ego simply dissipate because, well, who is there to impress? Who is there to control? Except yourself. Let's include in yourself your own responses to the very things you're creating and then having to live with, such as the dragon and its crazy making funhouse, the Matrix. With that said, once again, I emphatically encourage you to choose your life and world wisely.